Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. A very, very warm welcome to our evening together tonight with in a conversation with Jeremy Marshall. My name is Jim Walford. I'm a part of a church called Emmanuel Bishopston, and whether you're in Bristol or further afield, can I just say it is really, really good to have you with us. Thanks for logging on and joining with us tonight. The plan for this evening is really very simple indeed. I'm going to ask Jeremy a few questions over the next, 20 minutes or so, 20 minutes, half an hour. And then anyone watching at home has got the chance to pile in with their questions. And the way to do that is using an app with a website called Pigeonhole. Pigeonhole.at. Hope in Death is the passcode. So kind of do fire that up on your phone or on another internet browser or something, and you can submit questions actually from now on. Just put any questions in, and then we will seek to get through as many of them as we can a little later on. Jeremy has said he's really very willing to answer any questions any of us have about anything he says or about Christianity in general. So please feel free to make the most of it. If you're just joining us, maybe you're just coming online again, welcome. It's really great. Thanks for being with us tonight. Well, Jeremy, let me just say it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much for coming. I actually first met Jeremy, I was just thinking this over, back in 2004 in his office in Canary Wharf. And I was asked to see him because Jeremy was tasked with vetting me for a job I'd applied for. And well, I'm pleased to say I managed to get, I got offered the job, and
the truth is, Jim, we were desperate. We would have taken anybody.
Well, look, all these years later, the boot's on the other foot, and I'm going to put you through your paces.
Yeah, that's right.
So here we go. Jeremy, just as we start, just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, about where you live.
Yeah. So I live in Kent, so southeast of London. Married to Jeanette, who works as a counsellor. We've got 3 adult children, a daughter who's doing a PhD, and then 2 boys. One works in technology in London, and one's just left university in Manchester. I'm originally from Hertfordshire. I was trying to think of kind of connections to Bristol. Actually, my maternal grandparents were from Bristol, but maybe more recently, as a Hertfordshire lad, I'm a keen Watford fan. Season ticket holder, and I see our next game but one is against our fellow rivals for promotion, Bristol City. So hopefully we can both go up.
Great. You sometimes get to go and see Watford play, don't you?
Yeah, I even appeared. The club, when I've written this book, right, which you're going to mention in a minute, called Beyond the Big C, about my experience with cancer. And the club very kindly asked me to, they wrote an article in the programme, and then at half-time in a Premier League game, they interviewed me on the pitch, and an incredible miracle happened. Watford actually won the match, which was one of only a few we won last season, hence being now in the Championship. So yeah, that was quite, to speak to 22,000 people live was quite daunting. Although it was half-time, right? Probably some of them were had their minds on a cup of tea or a pint or something.
Jeremy, that's great. Yeah, just Jeremy mentioned he's written a book here, which you will have seen maybe on the publicity for this event, Beyond the Big C, Hope in the Face of Death. And part of this evening, I'm going to be exploring some of the things Jeremy says in this book, and at the end we'll just be to say how glad we'd be to sort of send out. We've got loads of copies that we'd love to send out to anyone watching tonight. But Jeremy, just tell us about your experience of lockdown. How has it been for you?
Well, what I'd say, Jim, in a really friendly way, is to everybody watching is welcome to my world. And what I mean by that is we'll come on to the kind of gory medical details in a minute. But for the last 8 and especially the last 5 years, every time somebody coughed or sneezed on a train or in a shop, I was nervous and afraid because I have no immune system. And in that same period, every day you wake up and it's sort of like having the sword of Damocles dangling over your head. You think, will I make it through the day, through the week?
Mm.
And now somehow everybody's experience is to some extent similar to mine. Everybody feels nervous about coughing and sneezing. And when we see the death statistics and we see, how sad it is that we just passed 50,000, then the reality of life and death really, really hits us. So, yeah, it has been hard. I've been in hospital a lot. Well, basically, I'm like a walking one-man medical disaster. If you read about an overloaded NHS, then that's my personal responsibility. So I've been in hospital quite a bit. Especially I was in the hospital with heart issues in the summer. I had severe chest pains and a high fever. I thought I had COVID, and I may have done. But I was sort of locked up for about a week in hospital on my own. No visitors. The hospitals were empty. And that was a sort of really weird experience. I'm quite used to being in hospital, but it's really lonely to be locked down in lockdown in a hospital on your own.
Goodness. And Jeremy, we're just very grateful for you to being here tonight. You just finished a course of chemotherapy, didn't you? Just a few weeks ago. So, Jeremy, tell us, just to help sort of place you a little bit more. Tell us a bit about the work that you got up to.
Sure. So, I was in Canary Wharf, but I managed to escape from Canary Wharf. So my last job before I got ill was I was chief executive of a family-owned private bank, C. Hoare & Co. It's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, family-owned bank in the world, 350 years old. And the family seat is actually not too far from Bristol. It's in Stourhead, on the sort of Somerset-Wiltshire border. The family are great fun. They're on the 12th generation of family ownership. So it was kind of a dream job, really, dealing with very wealthy people, which is what I did at Credit Suisse before, except some random vicar turns up looking for a job. That was a bit of light relief. And I spent most of my career dealing with some of the wealthiest people in the world, billionaires and so on. What was really interesting there, Jim, was that having a lot of money doesn't automatically make you happy. Now, of course, it's easier having a lot of money than living on a rubbish tip in Rio de Janeiro or something. But the idea that a lot of people have, that if I won the lottery or if I made a lot of money, then I'd be happy, is just not true. And money does very strange things to family. There's that TV series, maybe some of you have seen, Succession. You have the kind of dominant, wealthy patriarch who makes everything. And then really he tries to control the rest of the family.
Yeah.
And that often leads to real dysfunctionality, family disputes. So there's a good quote from the actor Jim Carrey, who said, "I wish everyone could have their dreams come true, so that you could see that having your dreams come true doesn't make you happy." And dealing with wealthy people, I mean, not everybody's like that. Some people are perfectly normal and happy, but does getting a lot of money automatically make you happy? No, absolutely not.
Wow. So, Jeremy, you're working for this this bank, and tell us you write a bit about it in your book, but tell us the day everything changed for you.
Sure. So it was really, Jim, a kind of two-step process. So about 8 years ago, one day I felt a tiny lump on my ribs in the shower. And being a typical guy, I didn't do anything. And my wife told me, go to the GP, which, humanly speaking, I'm glad I did. Otherwise, I'd be dead, I think. So eventually I was referred to the Marsden, and they said, look, you've got this rare type of cancer. It's a sarcoma. It's cancer of the muscle tissue. But we think we can treat it. So I went through about 6 months of treatment. And then for about 2 years, everything went back to normal. I went for checkups every 3 months, but life seemed to be returning to the way it was before. And then 5 years ago, I was at a friend's house here in Sevenoaks one Saturday, and it was a hot summer's day, and I went to adjust my collar here. And as I did that, I felt a massive lump on my collarbone, not like a tiny pea, like a golf ball. And what did I feel? I felt full of fear. I felt terrified because I knew straight away what it was. I knew it was the cancer. So I said, look, I'm sorry, I feel ill. I need to go home. I told my wife. I went back to the hospital. And they ran some tests. And a few days later, a day that sticks in my mind, Friday the 13th of June, 2015, I was sitting in the waiting room and at the Marsden, the nurse said, please come through. And as we walked down the corridor, she just said, look, I'm really sorry. And that was the only warning I had, because when I went into the room, there were lots of people there. And they said, look, we don't know how we missed this, because we've been doing all these tests about a year or so later, they discovered it was a completely unrelated, completely different type of cancer. So I don't blame them. But anyway, you've got tumors everywhere, half a dozen. Some of them are quite large, some of them are inoperable, and there's not really a great deal we can do. So the question you obviously asked then is, well, how long do you think I've got?
Yeah.
And doctors, being as they are, they sort of hedged it around. Well, I can't exactly say, but eventually they said, well, 18 months. So at that, I burst into tears. And if you're watching that, if you're watching this, please don't think I'm some kind of expert on cancer. I don't think anybody is. It's a grim disease to have to live with. And nor am I some kind of religious person or super Christian. I'm a banker, right? You don't get less religious than that. Jim is the religious type. I'm not. And it's been very, very difficult since. I'm kind of a walking one-man disaster zone. I've had 30 chemotherapies, radiotherapy, about a dozen operations. I've also had big problems with my eyes. I was blind for a while. I lost the sight in both eyes, one after the other. That was pretty scary. And then, as I mentioned, this year, having done oncology and having done ophthalmology, then I've done cardiology, although they can't find actually what it's I had pericarditis, which is inflammation of the muscle tissue around the heart, but probably caused by COVID, but I kept testing negative. So it's really difficult going through cancer. They can't cure it. When I do chemo, the tumors shrink, and when I stop, they grow again. And I would say that the hardest thing about cancer is the effect it has on your family.
Yeah.
Because, for example, to have to go home from the hospital and then to go and our children are all at university, so having to go to drive to them, and I didn't want to tell them on the phone and tell them when I got there, look, I've got a short time to live. Although sometimes humor helps. One of our children thought we'd come to tell him that the dog had died, so he was relieved it was only me. But joking aside, cancer is a really hard thing to live with, and the last 5 years have been very tough.
Jeremy, tell us. I wonder if you would just tell us a little bit more about what it feels like. I think you write quite movingly in the book about fear and just how that's and we'll get into something about the hope you have as a Christian in a moment. But I don't know, would you be up for telling us a little bit more about that sense of feeling afraid or anything else that you?
Yeah. I do feel afraid, and I feel afraid of both death and of the process of dying. I mean, I've had close family members in hospices dying of cancer, and it's pretty ugly. And each time I'm sitting in the waiting room waiting for the scan results, I have scans every couple of months. I'm very nervous and anxious. So what helps me there?
Is it scan anxiety or something?
Yeah. If you put scan and anxiety together, you make scanxiety. That's right. Yeah. So if you've been through cancer, because the scan shows you how it's spreading, has it shrunk, are there new tumors and so on. And they don't, when you actually do the scan, which is fair enough, they then send the results to the doctor, and 2-3 days later, they give you the results. So the thing that keeps me going there is the presence of God. And this isn't some supernatural thing. Again, I'm not a naturally religious person, but when I experience that fear in the waiting room, or when I go through various unpleasant procedures, which I'll spare you the gory details, then I remember the promises of God. And as a banker, right, sometimes people write checks and you think, well, can they honor the check? So the question is, who's making the promise, and will they be able to honor the promise? Will they be able to pay the check? So I think of the promises of God. I'll never leave you or forsake you. Or, look, I'm with you always, even to the very end of the age, which was the last thing Jesus said to his friends. Or perhaps the most famous chapter in the Bible is the 23rd Psalm, which, as many of you will know, begins, "The Lord's my shepherd." And it goes on to say, "Yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." So that's been my experience, that I've been walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And for Christians, belief isn't an insurance policy. There is no bypass around the valley of the shadow of death. In fact, the Bible says each one of us has to die, and after that, the judgment. After that, we have to meet God. And God doesn't promise us a bypass. What he promises us, that's been my experience, is his presence with us. And when we have the presence of God with us, there is still fear, but God, if you like, drives out fear. And there's a story in the Bible where Jesus is in a boat, and his disciples are terrified because they're going to drown. And eventually they wake him up, and he stills the storm. And then they're even more afraid. they're even more afraid in the mill pond calm than in the raging storm, because it began to dawn on them, okay, who is this ordinary looking rabbi asleep in the boat? This is God. This is the maker of the universe.
Yeah.
So that's been my experience. That I think anybody who says they don't fear death, coronavirus, cancer is either very brave or very foolish. I certainly do, but I find there is an answer to that fear, which is the presence of God.
And Jeremy, can I just push you a little bit more on that? Because I imagine many of us, will be watching this thinking, okay, maybe I don't believe in God. What does it actually mean to know the presence of God with us? I mean, is it about believing his promises and then feeling very, very, very real? Or what? Could you say any more about knowing his presence?
So Christians believe that Jesus Christ is God, the maker of the whole universe. The universe is pretty big, right? 75 trillion light years across. That he became a human being 2,000 years ago in an obscure corner of the Roman Empire, and that he went through suffering, he went through fear. So it's not just a theory or a religious framework. No, being a Christian is about knowing Jesus Christ and knowing someone who has suffered on our behalf, knowing someone who's gone through fear, and knowing someone who claims, and this is a big claim, right? You have to decide if it's true or not. But Jesus says, I have the keys of death and hell. If you have the keys to something, a car or a house, you normally own it. So Jesus says, I own death. I have the answer to death. And that not only helps you with fear, it also gives you, on a positive side, hope.
Jeremy, thank you. One person got in touch with me in the week, and they were keen. I just asked if you don't mind speaking to this, how Jeanette has found this whole process.
Yeah, look, it's really hard. That's the hardest thing about cancer, because you don't want to make your family sad. And yeah, it's been tough on her. It's very hard to plan. So things like holidays, we've several times had to cancel them. It's hard for her with her work. You just have to basically live week by week. And, you know, it's not just me. I was watching, there was a BBC program on Monday on hospital. There was a lady who had really serious bowel cancer. And, you know, what she was most worried about was her son, who I think was about 12 or something. And the film ended with her and him doing a jigsaw side by side when she got home. But that is the most dangerous and tough thing about cancer, is the effect it has on the Jeanettes and everybody who's in the family of those impacted by it.
And I know you're a part of a church there in Sevenoaks as we are here. I mean, in lockdown, probably it's very hard to have contacts and connections. But so I would say where we've helped people who have struggling with hard situations in their lives here in Bristol, having others who are there who can just do anything at any time, just cook a meal, do lifts, all that kind of stuff. Have you been able to experience any of that from your?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, being a Christian it isn't just about a personal thing, it's about a communal thing as well, and church is a community, should be the body of Christ. So yeah, it's been great and really kind of people in the church. And yeah, I really appreciate it when people pray for me, for example, which also I offer for friends of mine who are not Christians. And prayer, what have you got to lose, right? If there's nobody there, then who minds if you pray? So no, that does help. And cancer can be a really lonely disease in general, and especially in lockdown. So every time I'm in the hospital, it's just me, right? You can't have any family members, no visitors.
Yeah.
But that sense of other people caring for you and supporting you is really important.
Is it? Would you say that? Would that be one of the most encouraging things? Just knowing that people are caring and people are in touch, people are praying. Has that been something that you'd say would helps you through, or anything else? Yeah,
I think that sense of people caring for you, and also friends who are not Christians at all. So I don't want to portray Christians as some kind of super group. A friend of mine it's in the book, actually. A friend of mine who's a devout atheist said, I gave God a surprise today. I went into a church and said a prayer for you. And that really touched me, actually. I thought, thank you. Thank you for that.
Jeremy, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to get a bit more of a theological question. I was sort of mentioning to some of my friends, just saying, please come tonight, because we're going to think about a question which we all have, if we're Christians, and that is, how can a loving God, Jeremy, how can you believe that God is love when he allows cancer, allows coronavirus? How do you make sense of this great truth that, but God is a loving God?
Well, I think that's the most common question that people ask me and ask Christians in general. So this is what I'd say. First of all, something's gone badly wrong.
Yeah.
Because God made the universe good. Again, Christians believe that there is a creator God who made the universe, which is incomparably vast, we're tiny, and that he made it good. But the world, if we look at it, isn't good, right? So something's gone wrong. Well, what's gone wrong? Well, evil has entered the world. Now, there's obviously natural evil if we look at cancer, coronavirus, earthquakes, traffic accidents, but it's more than that. There's also, if we're honest, evil, wrong that each one of us have done. A man called Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, the line between good and evil doesn't run between countries. It doesn't run between political parties. It doesn't run between individuals. It runs right down the middle of each one of us. So if we're honest, each one of us have done things we're ashamed of. I certainly have, things we deeply regret having done. And not just to other people. We've also and are rebels against God, right? We don't want God interfering in our life. That's why I always think it's rather sad if you go to a crematorium and the coffin goes into the furnace to, my way, right? That's the kind of ultimate, almost two fingers to God. I'll do it my way. But the truth is that we're in a bad place because we're rebels against God, and we'll never find satisfaction or fulfillment until we come home to God. A man called Augustine said, "You, God, have made us for yourself. Our hearts are restless and we'll only find rest in you." So our problem is the things we've done wrong. We need to get back to God. Yeah. So given this mess that we're in, both a natural mess, but also the wrong things within each one of us, why doesn't God do something about it? Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I touched on a few minutes ago, that he did. That's our claim, right? You have to decide if it's true or not, which is that 2,000 years ago, the creator God, the maker of the universe, became a tiny baby and grew up. And Christians believe that Jesus Christ is 100% human and 100% God, and that he experienced fear and suffering. And I find that amazing. So the Christian God is not a remote God who set the universe underway and then disappeared off. No, he's a God who's involved with us. And Jesus, the night before he was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, experienced tremendous fear and suffering, much worse than any of us will. In fact, the Bible tells us he sweated great drops of blood. And Jesus prayed, "Father, if it's your will, take this cup," by which he meant the cup of suffering and death, "away from me, but let not my will, but your will be done." So why did he go through that? I have no choice about cancer, but Jesus had a choice. Why did he die? Well, I think two things I would say. One is because our biggest need is actually not coronavirus or cancer. Our biggest need is to get back to God. That's our biggest problem. It's not physical death, it's eternal death. It's separation from God. Mm-hmm. And Jesus on the cross, if you like, did what we can't do. We can't repay. We can't get right with God for all the things we've done wrong to other people and to God. But Jesus can. He took the bill. He paid the bill for all the things we've done wrong through his death on the cross for us. And what motivated him to do that? We've just had Remembrance Day yesterday, right? And we remember the verse from the Bible, "Greater love has no one than he who lays down his life for his friends," which is great when we remember people, who sacrificed in the war. Now, they died for their friends, for their countrymen, for their families. But Jesus died for people who hated him. By nature, we're not friends of God. We're enemies of God. If we'd been there, trust me, we'd have nailed him to the cross just as much as the people did then. So that's what motivated Jesus, love. And I mentioned before about that God himself, in that sense, suffered because he became a human being. A man called Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German pastor who stood up against the persecution of the Jews. He was executed just before the war ended in 1945. And just before that happened, he smuggled out of his jail a little piece of paper. On it, he wrote this: "Only a suffering God can help us." Only a suffering God can help us. That's the Christian claim, that we serve, we love, we know a suffering God, and that God can help us. And how can he help us? He can help us by rescuing us from this mess we're in through his death on the cross.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, thank you so much. Thank you. There's so much you're saying that please, if you've got a question you want Jeremy to unpack that a little bit more, please put it down. I don't know if we can get on the banner at the bottom of the screen just the reminder of the of how to do that. Pigeonhole.at. Joe, I'm really kind of sort of what's coming across tonight is just how very much the Christian faith is so focused on Christ. Whatever sort of question we're asking or exploring, there's the fact that God came as a human being in time and space history. It's a really foundational kind of. It's where we kind of have all our starting. It's our foundation place for answering any question we come at. Anyway, let's go on and let's see. Maybe we'll see that a bit more. Jeremy, I want to ask you, just sort of coming to the end of my questions to you now about this. I mean, you have a hope, Jeremy. You called your book "Hope in the Face of Death," but you talk about fear. In your book, you talk about tears. You talk about how hard it is for family and loved ones. Tell us a bit more. How do you know that your hope is not just wishful thinking?
Yeah, look, it's a very fair question. I guess, Jim, I'd say, look, there are two broad schools of thought. I realize it's a bit more complicated than that, but in the interest of time, I'm going to simplify it. Again, please ask me any question you like. So one school of thought is ably developed by our friend Professor Richard Dawkins, right? So what Dawkins says, what does the universe say to us? Nothing. The universe says to us, it's blind, pitiless indifference. Blind, pitiless indifference, because there's no purpose. Everything ultimately is meaningless. The only thing going on is DNA perpetuating itself, but even that has no meaning, right? I obviously have bad DNA. I hope, Jim, you have fantastic DNA and you live to 100, right? But ultimately, what difference does it make? An atheist on his deathbed said to his family, which is a logical thing to say, goodbye forever. So that's one school of thought. There is no hope beyond the grave. This life is it. And the universe has nothing to say to us at all. Yeah. We're utterly insignificant. Now, the Christian view is quite different, right? The Christian view is the universe speaks to us of a loving God who wants everyone to come home to him. He doesn't want anyone to perish away from him, but invites us all to come back and sent his one and only son into the world to rescue us. And that's amazing because it means that there's hope in the face of death. And it means the universe speaks to us of a loving God, not a blind, pitiless indifference. Now, I think if you're watching, it's not too difficult to argue that the second school of thought is a lot more attractive, right, than the first, right? Blind, pitiless indifference or a loving God. But the important question is not which is a more hopeful, which is a better truth. The question is which is true, because the Christian faith is only in any way helpful if it's true. Otherwise, it's a massive contrick. In fact, it's the biggest contrick ever in human history that roughly 2 billion people in the world believe. Now, when you're very ill and you get this diagnosis, I was a Christian before that, but this is an acid question. Do I really believe it? Is it really true? And yeah, I can confirm to you, I believe it is true. And the reason I believe it's true is that if I'm absolutely convinced, if I was there with an iPhone on the morning of Easter Sunday, AD 33-34, that what the 4 eyewitness accounts say happened really happened. You could have filmed it with a camera, that the stone was rolled away, Jesus had been dead for 3 days, and he came back. And he was seen by not just his disciples, but hundreds of people, even by 500 people at once. Now, maybe 1 or 2 disciples were, smoking magic mushrooms or, I don't know, away with the fairies, but not 500 people. This was a real resurrection where Jesus ate food. You could talk to him, you could touch him. In fact, he invited people to touch him.
Yeah.
So Christianity stands or falls on this. Did Jesus rise from the dead? Because if he didn't, it's a complete waste of time. It's a con. But if he did, then he offers life and he offers an answer to death. And this isn't just something that happened 2,000 years ago. The Christian belief is that we can know him now. So being a Christian is not just about what happens when we die, but it's about knowing Jesus Christ now. And he's amazing. He's utterly wonderful. He's God, but he's also human. And the Bible says he sympathizes with us in all our weaknesses and fears. And it's not just about the past. It's not just about the present. It is also about the future. The 23rd Psalm, the last verse is this: surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Mm.
So if we're a Christian, where are we going? We're going home. We're going home. Now, we don't have to go home. We can go away from God, right? But that's crazy. Why choose death? Why choose separation from God? And it's just the final word is this. If you've got doubts and difficulties, that's okay. Many people in the Bible, Jesus' own disciples, were riddled with doubts. And Jesus stood in front of a lady called Martha who was grieving. And she was, on the one hand, she thought, well, maybe there's something in it, yes. But on the other hand, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you rescue my brother? And Jesus says to her, and he says to you, I am the resurrection and I am the life. Do you believe in that? That's the Christian claim, that Jesus offers resurrection. He offers eternal life to be with him. So that's why I believe the Christian claim is true, because I believe Jesus really rose from the dead.
Well, so yet again, you're telling us we just need to go to Christ and look to and you're referencing a lot from the Gospels, Jeremy, or from the whole Bible, really. As you kind of give your answers. I mean, we must go to questions from other people now. I do just want to, before we do, and please put your questions in. Let's keep coming, have it along the banner at the bottom, having how to do that. Jeremy, just how would we? Because people might want to ask about this. How could we? How have you come to know God like this and come to know Christ? And how would you encourage anyone who's just listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm not religious, but I'd be interested. I may be in finding it out a little bit more. What would you say?
If you go and buy a car, right, what do? You go to a car showroom, you test drive the car, you look at the bonnet, you kick the tires, you say, is this a trustworthy car? It's the same thing with Christianity. Look at one of the eyewitness accounts with a Christian and figure out for yourself, is it true or not?
Yeah.
Is it true or not?
Eyewitness account, just to say the Gospels are sort of
the Gospels. Yeah, the four Gospels are written by, two were written by direct eyewitnesses, and two were written by people who went and interviewed eyewitnesses.
Yes. Okay.
And Christians believe that what they say is true, right? Now you have to figure out that for yourself if it's true. But I'm not asking you to take a leap in the dark. I'm asking you to believe based on evidence.
Yes. Great. Jeremy, I think let's I'm going to ask you a few more questions maybe at the end, but it's high time we got to see the questions that people are asking here. And someone asks, Jeremy, do you ever doubt your faith? What about doubt?
Look, I think all Christians have an element of doubt, and being a Christian is not about eliminating doubt. It's certainly not about kind of going effortlessly from one great thing to another. No, if we have doubts, and I do have doubts, then what do we need? We need to meet Jesus Christ. We need to meet Jesus Christ. There's a great story on Easter Sunday. These two disciples are running away, right? They're heading for lockdown, right? They're afraid, they're terrified. And Jesus comes along and walks with them. And there they are, riddled with doubts. And he doesn't appear to them and say, hi, it's me, I'm Jesus. No, he tells them, using the Bible, that it was necessary that he died. And that's the big thing that people then and now often have doubts about. Okay, I get Jesus was a good teacher, but what's all this cross and resurrection stuff?
Yes.
Well, as that happened, eventually at the end of the story, when they reach their destination, they do recognize Jesus. But when they look back on that journey with that stranger, they say this: were not our hearts burning within us? So when we have doubts, and we all have doubts, and Christians have doubts, and Christians are not super religious people, we're people who've met somebody. When we have those, then if you like, our cold, frozen, doubt-riddled hearts get thawed out. They're in a kind of spiritual microwave. Yeah. And what does that? Meeting Jesus Christ. And how do we meet him? Well, he can appear in all kinds of ways, but the normal way is through his word, is through the Bible, which is about him, really. Yeah. That's a testimony, if you like, to who he is and why he came.
Yeah. Jeremy, thank you. And on this whole topic of doubt, people are asking, has this whole experience strengthened your cancer diagnosis, strengthened your faith, or weakened it? I guess.
Yeah, look, I guess God will have to be the judge of that, but probably, humanly speaking, it has strengthened it. But that doesn't always happen, right? Some people who are Christians can go the other way.
Yeah.
What I feel it's given me is a bit of a kind of kick up the backside to do what I'm doing now, right? So I was a Christian before, but what I absolutely love doing now is I love telling people about Jesus Christ because I believe he's the answer to death.
Yes.
If I was just watching the news earlier and had this, Turkish German doctor, God bless him, who's discovered this, vaccine, and he was full of enthusiasm right about his vaccine, which by the way he's also making a lot of money out of, but that's fine, if it works, God bless him. But I feel I'm the same. I'm not making any money out of it. Naively, I didn't make any money out of the book. But what I feel I have is something amazing. I have the answer not to coronavirus, but the answer to life itself, and I want to tell people about it. And I love doing it. So yeah, in that sense, it's strengthened, or maybe kind of I feel like someone's come up behind me, i.e. God, and given me a shove to to get on with telling people about Jesus Christ.
Jeremy, tell us a little bit about your. Number of people asking for you to say a bit more about what it is you're hoping in. What are you looking forward to about heaven and about being with Christ?
Yeah. Well, heaven, first of all, is not about floating around on clouds and playing harps, and there's no St. Peter at the gate. That's all just kind of stuff that isn't in the Bible.
That's
so
right.
What's heaven like?
Yeah.
It's about meeting God face to face.
Mm-hmm.
And what will it be in heaven? There'll be no more pain or suffering. Imagine we have a toddler, right? And we're in the garden one day, and the toddler goes running off down the garden path and trips over and comes back, and they've kind of cut their knee, right? What do you do if it's your toddler? If you're the parent or grandparent, you sit the toddler on your knee, you get out your tissue, you wipe the toddler's eyes, and you clean up the wound, right? I'm not talking about sort of, flaps of skin hanging off. I'm talking about the normal kind of scuffed knee.
Yeah.
And then after a minute or so, the toddler runs off, right? So that's a picture the Bible uses of how it will be to be with God. God himself will wipe away every tear. So this life, there's lots of good things about it, but ultimately there is sadness. And also ultimately there is death. And that is the one thing that we don't want to think about. There's a real paradox there because we plan for all kinds of things in life, right? Which may or may not happen, holidays, work. But the one thing that we know will happen, death, we don't want to think about. Benjamin Franklin said, you can avoid everything in life except death and taxes. Having worked in private banking, I can tell you that's not altogether true. But you can't avoid death, can you? What's the death rate watching this call? 100%. So why will heaven be amazing? Because the Bible says that God himself will swallow up death.
Yeah.
God himself will swallow up death. Like I had a meal just now, very nice chili con carne, and I ate it and it was gone, right? Gone. The same thing. That's the image the Bible used. God will eat death. So what will heaven be like? It will be amazing because there'll be no more pain, no more suffering, no more death, and we will see God face to face.
And I have to say, I love that image of the idea of him wiping every tear away from your eye. It's such a tender picture, such an intimate picture, isn't it? It's so evocative. It really. Oh, thank you for that. Right, here we go. Next question, Jeremy. So isn't Christianity just a clever mental technique to deal with the fear of disease and death?
Yeah, look, that's a fair question. And I would kind of come back to what I said before, that in a way, the answer there is yes, right?
Yeah.
Because there is, I don't know about clever mental technique, but is a way of coping with fear of disease and death. Right. Yeah. And some people say, look, I don't need that, right? That's a kind of crutch for sick people. I just face the universe as it is. But the key question is, well, what is the universe like? And are the Christian claims real? Yes or no? So if they're not real, or we can't really tell if they're real, or if they're kind of like, if they're a fairy story, let's say, we might read Little Red Riding Hood or Cinderella and we think, oh, that's a nice story. It doesn't make any difference to the way we live. If Christianity is in that category, then it is a clever mental technique. But if it's true, if you can know the living God who made you, if you can get back to God, then it's much more than a mental technique. It's a matter of life and death.
Jeremy, thank you. I just would, just say, for me, it was an absolute game changer to realize this is a a faith that is rooted in time and space. It is a historical faith. It's not sort of trying to adopt a worldview kind of in a vacuum. It happened 2,000 years ago, and it was written about, and you can kind of, as you say, kick the tires and explore it, which gives it a sense it's not just a sort of potential sort of way of thinking. It's all based on things
I mean,
that have happened.
At the time, 2,000 years ago, there were people, and maybe that's relevant to the previous question, who I don't know what it is, who the person was, but good question, thank you, who were Stoics, right? So they didn't, they were educated people they regarded the sort of Greek gods as laughable, but basically Stoicism was to some extent just accepting life as it is, right? So when the Christian claim came along of a resurrection, that was pretty radical, and shocking in a way. And it's the same thing now. It's valid to say, look, I don't need all that, and I have my own way of coping with it. But the central Christian claim is not about a philosophy. So we're not kind of Stoicism 2.0.
No,
we're people who know someone, and the someone we know is Jesus Christ. He's the center of the Christian religion, and Christianity is not about being religious or living a good life or doing your best. It's about a radical transformation through meeting and knowing and following Jesus, which, by the way, is not particularly easy, right? Being a Christian, there is a cost to it, which is we have to do a U-turn. We if you like, going the wrong way. We're like that. I read about a guy who went to play a snooker match in Barnsley, and someone ended up in Barnsley, Gloucestershire, not Barnsley, Yorkshire. Well, that's us, right? We've gone the wrong way. We've gone away from God, and God says, turn round, come back to me. So being a Christian is not only about a belief that, what I've heard is true. It's about turning around and coming back to God.
Yes. Jeremy, thank you. Okay, I'm just looking at the questions coming in. Please keep sending in your questions. It's really great to have loads to choose from, and keep voting for the ones you want me to ask as well. Here we go. One which has got three votes. Jeremy, I mean, I think you said a bit about this already, but I maybe just I don't know if you want to say any more. It is all okay that your faith supports you as you walk towards death, but how does it support your family?
Yeah, look, that is a very good question. Being a Christian, you can't impose your beliefs on your family, right? And being born into a Christian family or a Christian country, if such a thing exists, which I very much doubt, it's a personal thing. Somebody said, it's not in the Bible, but it's true, God has only children, no grandchildren, right? So we can't have a second-hand relationship with God. It's got to be first-hand. Now, my wife, children do, share the Christian faith that I have, and in that sense, it does support them. But I would respect it even if they said, well, actually, I don't believe it. I'm not trying to impose my beliefs on my family. I mean, when they were small, they went to church, right? But now they're all in their 20s. They can do as they like. And I'm not trying to impose my faith on you either. What I'm doing is I'm saying that Jesus has enormous claims that he makes about himself. And I believe this is the most important question actually for any human being. Are they true or not? Are they true or not? Is when he says I'm God, when he says I have the answer to death, when he says I'm the resurrection and I'm the life, are they true? Are those claims true?
Joe, we're going to keep moving. Thank you. I'm going to roll a couple of questions together. Actually, I'll keep it simple. Here's one. How did you first become a Christian?
That's sort of related to the previous question, really. I grew up in a Christian home, and I hated it. Right, I really hated. I much rather would have played football than go to church. I thought it was incredibly boring and irrelevant. And then, what happened to me was one day I met Jesus Christ, not in a supernatural way. I never had a kind of road to Damascus experience, but maybe like pieces of the jigsaw. As I was listening to someone talking a bit like, maybe you're listening to me, it suddenly clicked that actually it was true. Actually, it was really true. It wasn't a fairy story. It wasn't a kind of moral philosophy of life. It was true, and I could know Jesus Christ. So that's something Jim, you're right. That's what I really stress is what's being a Christian about. It's about knowing, trusting, and following Jesus Christ.
Thank you. There's a question about Jeremy. You were given a sort of prognosis of 18 months. You write about it in the book, and then was
Do you believe it's a miracle? Yeah, I don't know, but I think in a way, yes, because certainly the doctor. I've in the book. My doctor's a guy called Robin Jones, who's a fantastic oncologist. And when you get to know someone, you've seen them sometimes. It seems like every week you get to know them really well. And recently he said, yeah, we were having because he knows my story, right? We were having a conference in the Marsden about your case. And yeah, some of the others were quite surprised that you were alive, right? And also responding well, because I just keep doing the same chemo over and over again. So, yeah, I don't know. But I believe God has a purpose. Yes. I believe as Christians, we're immortal till God calls us home, right? Yeah. We're immortal till God calls us home. So depends what you mean by a miracle, but I believe God has a purpose for me being here. And maybe that purpose is that through this rather incompetent, sinful, weak person, you might hear about Jesus Christ. So yeah, I think it probably was a miracle. And I can tell you one thing, I'm very, very happy to be alive. I'm very happy. Every day I wake up, I think, yeah, I'm alive. And most days I feel okay. I think, yeah, I feel good. So that's wonderful.
Joe, do you pray to be kind of healed of this cancer?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And look, God hasn't zapped it and removed it, but humanly speaking, yeah, here I am. I'm alive. So yeah, I'm incredibly. There's a verse in the Bible. My times are in your hand, right? Yeah. So whose hands are we in? I certainly wouldn't want to be in my hand. I'm incompetent, right? I certainly wouldn't want to be in your hands, Jim, or anybody else's hands. And I don't want to be in the hands of some blind, indifferent universe. I believe that I'm in the hands of Almighty God, and that's comforting. Yeah, definitely.
Jeremy, one question.
Do I pray? Yeah, I do pray. Yeah. Now, sometimes friends of mine have prayed and they haven't been healed. I don't know. There, I think the question is, can we trust God? Does God know what he's doing? Is God trustworthy? Yes. And ultimately, we all have to die. Yeah. The Bible says the wages of sin is death, right? All the things we've done wrong, they're all going to lead us to death, right? So we may live, I hope you all live to 100. I hope I live longer. I walked my daughter down the aisle last year when she got married. That was amazing. I never thought I'd do that. But ultimately, yeah, our biggest need is not physical healing. It's healing in the sense of getting back to God, getting right with God.
Jeremy, I'm just going to looking at questions here. People get a chance to vote as to what ones the ones which they most want me to ask, or what they think. Here we go. One which gets a number of votes is, what do you do, Jeremy, when you doubt that God is real? When you're doubting, what do you do at that point?
I never, in my illness, doubted that God existed, but I did sometimes and do doubt. Has he forgotten me? Right? Yeah. What's going on? Why am I going through this? Then I go back to, well, what's he like? What's he like? There's two questions, friends. Does God exist? And if he does exist, what's he like? Is he trustworthy? So I go and look at one of the eyewitness accounts. There's a wonderful story which I love. For example, Jesus meets a grieving widow at the head of a procession carrying the body of her dead son to be buried, right? What an image for coronavirus. What an image for now.
Desperate.
Yeah. And what's he like? What's Jesus like? He's first of all, he's full of kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us he's deeply moved. Again, the Christian God is not a remote, indifferent God, a personal God. And he does something really unusual, which is he reaches out and he touches the stretcher with the dead body, which no ordinary rabbi would do because that makes you unclean. So what's this Jesus that I'm recommending to you like? As we face death, as we're even going towards death, he's full of kindness and compassion. But there's more, because he's full of power, right? Because he also says to the boy, get up, and he gives the boy back to his mother, right? So when I've got doubts and difficulties and struggles, I trace my steps back, right? On what basis do I believe in God? I believe because I believe the eyewitness accounts are true. I believe that story really happened. I believe that if we go to heaven, we will meet that lady and her son. And that she will say, yes, that's right. And we'll say, do you know what? 2,000 years later, in England, a country you never heard of, there we were talking about your story. And she'll say, yes, amen, praise God. So I believe that really happened. So when I have doubts, I trace my steps back and I look at the evidence and I look at what Jesus Christ is like, and I find him full of kindness, full of compassion, and with the power over death.
Yeah. We're kind of drawing to a close now. I think we've got here maybe time for a couple more questions. Here's one, and let me just ask it in two parts. How can we trust the Bible is true? Okay, so you're talking about looking at evidence and looking at. So can you just say a little bit about how we can trust the Bible? And maybe, Jeremy, could you share a little bit about your experience of taking friends to the Bible and how you find doing that?
Yeah, look, I've lots of skeptical friends and friends who think the Bible's a load of rubbish or fairy stories. I have a thing which I've found really useful called the Word 1-to-1. It's simply got John's Gospel on one side and questions and answer on the other. And I just sit down with my friends, it's pre-COVID, or we do it on Zoom, and say, okay, let's have a chat, right? That's all I'm asking you.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to go to church. I'm just asking you have a chat.
Yeah.
And on the second question, or the first question about how do we know the Bible's true? Well, there's some good books we can give you. There's a very good book by a friend of mine called Pete Williams, Can We Trust the Gospels? Mm-hmm. I don't have time to answer all aspects of that, but I believe that the extra biblical evidence that Jesus not only existed, but that the Bible is reliable, especially the eyewitnesses, is overwhelming. Can I prove it 100%? No, but I can prove it to a high degree of probability. And there are many, many extra biblical things which correlate with the accounts that the eyewitnesses give.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I just want to, I've got a copy actually as well, just here of the Word 1-to-1. We here in Bristol, we would be so glad to, if anyone was interested, hey, I'd love to look at the Bible and just with one other person, and just maybe just for one session, and just to have a bit of a guided read through. A whole load of us here at a part of the Emmanuel churches would be so glad to help you and do that with you. Jeremy, I think we are we're there. Let's do one last question. I think this is quite an interesting one. I think you sort of referred to it once or twice. Don't you think it's bad to hold on to your faith just because of a lack of a better alternative? Is that what you said, or that's what our questioner is asking?
Yeah,
get that up on the screen.
That's a very fair question. Well, I think it is a better alternative, but it's only a better alternative if it's true. Yeah. It's actually cruel if it's not true. Yeah. Then it is a delusion and a contrick. So that's my claim, right? And I'll finish on this. Yeah. What's Christianity all about? It's about a person, Jesus Christ, who we believe has the answer to death, has the answer to fear, has the answer to suffering. And we believe that you can meet him and you can know him. And have a look for yourself. Decide for yourself. What have you got to lose? If what I've said is the biggest load of rubbish, okay, take half an hour and go further. And it's crazy not to. What have you got to lose, right? The Bible's the world's best-selling book. There's certainly something interesting in it. But Christians believe it's much more than the world's best-selling book. It's the answer to life. It's the answer to death, because it tells us about Jesus Christ.
Jeremy, I think we'll end there. And I want to say thank you very, very much on behalf of all the people who are watching, and to you and to Jeanette, giving you up for another evening for being with us tonight to answer those questions, and in such an honest way. We're really very grateful indeed. I want to speak to everyone here who's watching on, and just say, if you would like a copy of Jeremy's book, you can. Brilliant! The link has come up here. That's how you can. Just need to go to that that link, emmanuelbristol.org.uk/free-book, and we would love to send you a copy of his book free of charge. You just have to whack in your details there on that link, and you'll see when you do, there's also a chance to tick the box if you'd like to hear about similar events that we run to the evening we've had tonight with Jeremy, because throughout the year we put on sort of events a bit like this, not on Zoom, not on YouTube. Hopefully we can get to do it in the flesh, which is so much better, but we'll do it. We'll keep doing that. And because we're just really keen that people across Bristol and further afield can find out more about Jesus Christ. And so that's what we're all about. So if you want, when you tick for the free book, you can also tick saying, yes, I'd be interested in finding out more. And let me make a promise to you now, and that is you won't be bombarded by emails. It'll probably just be me just going, oh yeah, I'll just email out telling people that this is coming up, and I'll do that once in a while, and then you can unsubscribe at any time. So please do that if that would be helpful to you. Now I want to also say that I imagine that a lot of tonight has felt very unsatisfying. I bet you felt like, oh, stop, I want to hear more, or that's too much, or I'm not sure I agree with that. And if that's where you're at, well, can I just encourage you to do what Jeremy was encouraging us to do, is to kick the tires a bit and to say, well, look, I need to explore that a little bit more, a little bit further. And if you want, if you don't particularly know anyone at Emmanuel, for instance, you've just got this link randomly, one thing you can do is when you sign up for the free book, you can tick also, I'd love to have a chance to have a chat with someone about some of these things further, and either me or someone else from the church will be only too happy to get in touch with you and talk a little bit more. We meet online at the moment every single Sunday. We meet in the morning, afternoon, and evening. All the details for how to do that, how to kind of sign on our website, emmanuelbristol.org.uk. And what I really want to say, just as we finish, is when we plan our Sunday meetings, we always do it with visitors in mind. We try not to be sort of in-housey in the way we talk or cliched, or we just try and be very simple and clear. Every single Sunday service, pretty often we pretty much everyone, we have a time of Q&A. So if you've never come along to church, now's a great chance to kind of be able to sort of snuck in at the back and just have a look at what's going on, maybe ask a question, and we'd love to have you with us. But that's all for tonight. Jeremy, thank you again, and everyone else, I hope we'll see you on a Sunday.